It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Hello to all. Welcome to Divas That Care Network. I am Joyce Benning, and I will be your host for this absolutely invigorating, robust lifestyle show. I am so excited today as I have with me my returning diva, Deb Matlock, and her and I are going to share about nature connections through our lives. Oh, this is just going to be one magical show. And I'm so very grateful for Deb being on my show. I'm so very grateful for each and every one of you listeners today. So, with that, Deb, could you please introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back on your lovely show. My name is Deb Matlock, as Joyce said, and I am in Colorado, USA, and I have a small business called Wild Rhythms, where I focus on supporting people to explore and deepen their sacred connection to earth animals and the world of spirit. And I do this through practitioner trainings for life coaches, educators, healers, counselors, people who want to integrate this work into their own offerings for clients. I also offer public workshops and retreats and a little bit of one-on-one nature-based spiritual life coaching. So I'm really happy to be chatting with you again today.
Oh, Deb. And it's just, our topic is just so into everything that you are involved in making the world a better place for humans and animals. And so, as we talk about nature connections through our lives, there's so many thoughts that come into my mind, to my heart, that just, it just really touches my soul, this topic today. So, how would you like to start it? And we will just chat from there.
I'm excited about this topic too. You know, when I think about my own journey and my own connection to nature today, I have to be honest. I look back and the threads were starting at a very young age, and I think that that's probably true for all of us. And I'm talking about the good experiences, the challenging experiences, the stressful experiences, you know, all the experiences we have with the wild natural world from day one. Because from day one we're taking in air and food and moisture, and you know, like we're part of it. And I think that if we allow that retrospective process a little bit, looking back, we can sort of sometimes not only see the threads that we still have in our lives today and how valuable they are, but we can also sometimes resurrect little threads that maybe we had sort of have kind of gotten brushed under the rug as our adult lives have taken over and our responsibilities and obligations have come front and center. And so it's kind of an exciting topic to me to think about that, you know, who we are through our lives, the essence of who we are. Not that we don't grow and develop, but I think there's an essence that maybe sticks with us, you know, from the beginning.
Oh, oh, I so agree with you. There is definitely an essence that is put into our hearts at a young age, is how I kind of look at it, because mine has always been with animals. For as long as I can remember, there have been animals in my life, and they grew into my heart, and they're so in my heart that I can't even imagine my life without an animal, because it just wouldn't be complete. And I think that goes back to growing up as a child, because I always had a dog around, and they were always my best friend. I had kitty cats all over. I lived I was very fortunate and blessed. I had horses in my life. I had cattle in my life. And it's just been, they are such a part of me. And I really feel that that nature connection was brought into my life at such a very young age. So I can totally relate on how this nature connection helps form us in our daily lives, and how it is such an essence from the very start of our lives.
Oh my gosh, I can relate so much. I similarly in my own story. I was born and my parents had a little parakeet named Forbes who would run around the edge of my crib. I've seen pictures. I don't remember it sadly, but I've seen pictures. And he would look in and chirp at me and make me giggle. And, so we're talking weeks old. I had this little parakeet babysitter, you know, and then my first best friend was a dog named Jenny, who I actually wrote about for the Divas That Care animal
Mhm.
anthology. I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago now. And so I look at these formidable beings in my life, and from there were many many animals, and like you, I've never been without. And sometimes I try to imagine what would it even be like if I didn't have all these different beings in my life that needed my care, and also had their own needs and agendas. And I'd be an entirely different person. I would be an entirely different person. And I think that when I allow that, it allows me to honor that part of myself today in a different way. And I think about it, and I actually, one time about 20 years ago, I was taking a workshop on eco psychology and ecotherapy, actually. And there was a person in the workshop who, I don't agree with what he said at all, but it was an interesting moment because we were paired up doing a little exercise of like mirroring back and forth. And he said, "Have you ever questioned why you have so many animals? Maybe that's some part of you that isn't fulfilled." And I remember sitting there looking at him going, or it's the truest part of me that's completely fulfilled,
Mhm. Mhm.
because this is how it's always been. This is a thread, and I think that that's where, in that moment when he said that, it was like feeling back to my roots of, similar to yours, it sounds like, of animals just being such a part of my life and a very important part, that I could feel the non-resonance of what he said, as opposed to hearing his words and becoming insecure about it or starting to question my own life. Instead, I was like, I think I don't agree with you one darn bit, man. Like, forget it.
Oh, I would so agree with you because the memories, when I start to think of my childhood, the first thing that pops into my mind is the animals and the things I did with the animals and the animals I had in my life. Those are my memories. And my memories with my dad are always around the horses and the cattle. The memories just come in that way. And I was born in Kansas around wheat harvest time. And to this day, that is one of my favorite times of the year. And the beautiful memories I have of my dad and I out in the beautiful wheat fields with the wheat waving in the wind and the Kansas winds and cutting wheat. And it's just, it's just part of nature. I mean, yeah, we've been around the animals, and I thought, well, I'm going to bring in a little bit about the nature of the plants and everything, and working in the soil and the ground and raising these beautiful plants. So they are just such a part of me, and I really feel, I honestly believe that's why I was born around the time of harvest in Kansas, because it is truly my favorite time of the year. I absolutely love wheat harvest time.
Oh, I think that is such a wise observation. It's like where we have found ourselves on this amazing earth in our lives. As we get older, we can make choices, right? But when we're born and we're children, most of us are not having our parents sit down and say, okay, where do you want to live? Or where do
Yeah.
there's a bigger mystery there. Like, why were you born at that time and in that place? And it still fills your soul. And yeah, I think those wild places, just like we talked about with the animals, are so much a part of it, and I think in my own story, I've lived in Colorado since I was about 3 months old, and my heart and soul are here, and I can feel in my body that I will be in the Western landscape forever. And
Mhm.
it's challenging as a landscape. The world is different. We have more fire, we have more extreme weather, just like so many places do. And I can feel in my heart that my roots and my soul doesn't, I don't think it lives the same way someplace else. And curiously, I was born in California in the Bay Area. I lived there for about 3 months. My father, that was it. That was it, right? And I'll have to be honest, I went out there and visited about 4 or 5 years ago, and there's a different feeling in that area. I've never lived there more than my infant first few weeks. I'm certainly not going to move there. I don't feel pulled, but there's something that happened to me when I was there that it's just different. I've been to a lot of places and a lot of beautiful, amazing parts of this earth that I love deeply and that I feel in my heart. But there was something different about where not only where I've lived my whole life, but also the place where I showed up on this planet, my first breath. And it's a beautiful, exciting mystery to me. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. Oh, oh, that is so neat to hear you say, because it just kind of brings into my mind, I actually live about 6 miles from where I was actually born, the little town I was born in Kansas. And I love where I live. It's like it's magical land here. And I've never really felt that so much anywhere else. And that just kind of touched my heart when you said that, because this is where I belong, is how I feel. And yeah, I'm in central Kansas, and yeah, we have the winds, and they say it's Tornado Alley and all of this, the challenges, just like every place, there are challenges, but it's where I feel at home. It's where I feel my heart calls me to be. So there is so much to that when you just really open up your heart and feel that nature connection that brings you back to where you were when you were either born or where you've lived all your life, and the connections that are there for you. So, oh, that was beautiful, Deb.
Yeah, and I think what's intriguing too is that I've also met people who have um very different stories. It sounds like you and I have a similar story of
Uh-huh.
being most of our adult lives, well, most of our lives in a very, I'm currently living now 45 minutes from where I grew up.
Yeah.
And, so what is that, 20 miles maybe?
Uh-huh.
And I've met people also who had very nomadic lives and haven't never really been in one place for more than a year or two maybe. But when they open themselves up to their own sense of connection to the wild world, to the world of animals, to nature, to their own, spiritual longings, all of those threads still weave through, even if they moved around. Like I'm thinking of a friend of mine who was raised in the military, and so she had a lot of different home bases over her childhood and early adulthood. And she went into the military herself, so her movement had continued for a while. And yet she has this ability to go to a place and to find within herself the inspiration to deeply connect with this new place, to let herself open up to it. And she's still pulling those threads through her life, the
Mhm.
parts of her life. I think for her, one of her passions was insects. And so all the different military bases, of course, she could find insects, right? So wherever she went, that thread was still pulling her, different insects, different colors, different shapes. And, her story goes, yeah, in some places, my mother would get more worried about me playing with the insects than other places, like there are certain places where the insects are a little more fierce, and, but it's the thread was there for her, even though her actual moving kept her from rooting deeply in one place for years and years and years.
Oh, oh, I hear you on that too, because I know a lot of people that have moved all over, and they just seem to be happy and adjust so well wherever they're at. And I'm like you, I too totally believe the threads through their life, the nature threads, the wild threads of all that's around us. It just keeps weaving its way to keep them in that happy, positive state wherever they are. So, and we're just all created so unique and so much different, that to me, that is when people are moving all the time, that's almost a talent that they're given, or a unique gift that they're given, that they can keep that thread of nature and wild, keep going wherever they go.
Oh, I love how you phrase that. Yeah, like a talent or a gift for sure, and it's a skill set to develop too, of like how do we sink into our places, whether we're in the same place for decades and decades, or whether we're moving around. And how do we attune ourselves and sort of bring to our awareness, this is important. I want to sink into this place. I want to really be here, and even though I don't live here, or I'm only going to live here for 6 months, or whatever it might be. And, my experience with that was I was 20 years old and I lived in Chicago for 3.5 or 4 months. I was a dancer back then and I was out there And I got there within the first few days, I really started to struggle. There were no mountains. And in Colorado, the mountains are grounding to me. First of all, I don't even know what direction west is if I don't, because where I live, the mountains are directly to my west, I get very disoriented. But I got out there and I immediately realized if I don't figure out how to connect, I'm just going to be in a depression for the whole few months that I'm here.
Yeah.
So I went out one day. I remember specifically walking to just welcome myself, or become familiar with the wild nature that was right here in the middle of the city. And I found myself little parks and trees and birds, and then walking down to the lake, which for a girl from Colorado, that lake was like the ocean. I mean, my goodness, it had waves and seagulls and, and I remember I fell so in love with it there that when it was my time to leave, I actually had to go to the lake to say goodbye. And I was in tears, because I thought, we have built this beautiful relationship together, and now I'm leaving and I don't want to move here. I just want you to know how much I loved you, Lake, and I still think of that lake, and I still have a special space in my heart for that time. That was a very different time than where I call home.
Oh, that is just beautiful, because to me that just shows you it's almost like at first you were living from your mind that, oh man, I really don't want to be here. I want to be back home in Colorado. And then when you let your heart take over and say, we're going to find the thread that will connect me back to the nature and what I so love, that was what I was hearing. You went into your heart and then you went out to the lake, and there it was. There was all that beauty that you could find to bring you the peace in your heart, to help you to adjust to live there for the months that you did. So, oh, that's a beautiful story to tell, how you can adjust when you come back to your heart and go back to those nature connections. To me, that is showing how the nature connections through our lives keep threading our way through, if we just let them thread their way through it.
Oh, you just gave me chills. I could not agree more. And as you were talking, what was coming to my mind was, um, this is a perfect opportunity for us as adults to think about that. As children, we were obviously very heart driven. And there's a whole body of work called biophilia, which talks about how we show up on this earth with an innate love for other beings. That's kind of in our bones, in our, the essence of humanity. And that biophilia concept is that's the natural orientation of all of us, and that it's the cultural, familial, it's all the things, that the voices that tell us we can't feel that way or we shouldn't. Well, you weren't really talking to that bird, you're just a little crazy little 4-year-old. You didn't really dream about the sky and the ocean. That just doesn't matter. All the things, that the voices that we may be told, but the essence of who we are is deeply in love with and in connection with the world around us. And so looking at it as adults today, we can allow ourselves the joy of looking back over our story and our experiences with nature, and just saying, okay, what parts do I want to invite back in? Maybe that I haven't. Maybe as a kid, maybe somebody was really enchanted with birds and felt like they were talking with birds, and maybe as an adult that has sort of faded. So is there a way to sort of bring that thread back on a conscious level and say, I'm going to focus on this now. I want that part of life back, and my connection back.
Oh, oh, Deb, that gave me the chills when you said to invite that back in, because I was the one that always talked to all my animals. I mean, they knew me. I told them everything. And then as I got as an adult, like you said, people start to say, well, you can't talk to the animals. That's crazy. And I'm like, okay, but they've always been my best friends. So you kind of put it on a back burner. And as I got older, I was like, no, I can relate to the animals. I can invite that back into my heart and get out of my mind from what other people are saying. And I continually talk to my animals. I mean, they know me. They know who I am, and I share everything with them. And they share with me. And it is just so beautiful when you can invite that thread back in from your childhood and start living it again from your heart. It is such a beautiful experience.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that brings up a story. Remember I had a boyfriend in high school, really sweet guy. We're still friends. And he was very, very focused on tangible scientific evidence for things. And I was very not focused on that. And I remember I shared with him once that I felt like the trees were talking and that I could talk with the trees in a very natural way, not a contrived way, not like everybody has their own way of doing that. I really believe that. And everybody does it. We just have
Mhm.
all of our different ways. And he looked at me and he said, Deb, you just want that to be true. And I'm not going to kid you, Joyce, that rattled me for a bunch of years. I was at a young, teenage, very impressionable age. And this
Yeah.
person who I cared about said, well, you just want that to be true. It
Mhm.
sent me down this rabbit hole. Well, is that true? Do I just want it to be true? And honestly, it took a good decade for me to go, just like what you said. Well, no, actually, that is the reality of the situation.
Mhm.
But it took a long time to peel away the layers of what that one comment, probably supported by all the messages in the bigger culture about how we don't, you know, we can't interact with the non-humans in that way. That we all hear those things all the time, whether they're directly or just undertones. That's the world we live in, unfortunately, for a lot of us in the Western world.
Yeah.
But then the flip side is that rabbit hole, that journey to going back to our deepest essence and our most authentic way of connecting. That is a really powerful place too. So I think we've all had experiences that pull us away and that maybe hurt our hearts, but when we have to sort of move ourselves back consciously, just like what you were saying, that you're like, no, wait a second, this is how this is. I do talk to my animals and we know each other. It's almost like it allows us to more deeply root in that truth
Mhm.
because it's been challenged.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a blessing in it, I think.
Oh, yeah. I think there is too. There's such a blessing in those challenges in some ways because, like for me, uh, hearing, well, no, you can't talk to them, and then I kind of put it, like I said, kind of put it on the back burner. But when I came back to it and realized, yes, I could, they did talk to me. It was almost like I formed a deeper connection then. It went deeper in my heart that they were communicating with me. I could communicate with them. I could communicate with the trees and the birds when they're singing and what they're trying to say. And just, it's, you learn from your challenges, I always say. And to me, I really did learn from that challenge that how much of a deep connection I can have with the nature and with all the animals around me. And it's just gotten more beautiful than ever.
Yeah, I think you said it really well. It allows us to deepen in, and it allows us to, it's like, claim it.
Mhm.
Just like that guy in my class, who said the reason you have animals maybe be because you're trying to fill something in yourself.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't let that one take me down a rabbit hole too far, I will say it stuck with me because here we are 30 years later and I'm sharing the story.
Uh-huh.
It helped me see how other people might view things or how they might experience their lives. So it helped
Yeah.
me understand. But it also helped me, like, the part of me that was like, so clearly, no, that's not my truth.
Mhm.
So there was a gift in that too. And I think that that's where, for all of us, people listening, all of our journeys, if we can just say, okay, yeah, I have some threads of my true essence. And those are, we have a right to bring those forward. And I think the world needs us to bring that biophilia part of ourselves back front and center, the part of ourselves that just showed up here naturally, loving other beings. I mean, how many little babies do you see who aren't enchanted by birds and squirrels in the trees, like in flowers? I mean, it's the way we show up, and it's the way we all have a right and a need to be. And to that, we can say to the larger voices that are challenging that, fine, go over there. I'm going to do it this way. I don't want
Right.
to, I'm done with that. That's a story that doesn't support a beautiful, harmonious life on this earth. It just doesn't support it.
Exactly. Oh, I love how you said threads of my true essence. And that's exactly what it is to me. It's going back into your heart and saying, those are the threads of my true essence. This is who I am, and this is who I want to be. I want to share with the world to make it a better place with the threads that have come into my life, and to help them maybe work through some of the challenges when they're not letting those threads of their true essence shine through, because they feel it's not what the world wants them to be or wants them to do. And I think so many times we follow what the world thinks we should be rather than what those threads of true essence are.
Yeah, and we follow what we think is going to be accepted.
Mhm.
Because I know that that's where I hid a long time, my love and connection
Yes.
to animals and all of that. But here's the thing, right? Whose acceptance do we really want? The outer world that's telling us we can't do this and that has a different agenda to, if we fall in love with the wild world and the world of animals, the world's going to look different. We're going to have to live differently. So or do we want the acceptance of our soul and the world around us and all the animals that we interact with, who maybe they're vying for us to notice them in a different way or interact with them in a deeper, more meaningful way? And looking at our dogs and our cats as in a more respectful, connected way. That's when I started getting clear for myself with whose acceptance do I really need
Mhm.
and do I really want? And it certainly helped me clarify, well, actually, I'd really rather this little bird over here who's chirping away. And if I look and say, I think you're so beautiful, thank you. And I'd rather have that acceptance for myself and that bird than somebody else who tells me that that's a silly waste of my time to do that.
Oh, Deb, I so agree with you. Whose acceptance do we want? And to me, you have to look inside and find that acceptance of who you want. Oh, that was just beautiful. Deb, this show has gone so quickly, which I knew it would. There is so much to share about the nature connections through our lives. I have loved every moment of this. And before we close, would you please share with our listeners the best ways to connect with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't believe how quick this went. This is shocking to me. Yeah, I would love to chat with folks. You're welcome to check out my website, which is wild-rhythms.com. I've also got a Facebook group called Sacred Connection, Earth, Animals, and Spirit. So if you're a Facebook user, you're welcome to jump over onto that group and join us there. But otherwise, I just wish everybody the beautiful experience of reflecting back on their childhood connections to wild nature and seeing which ones are still relevant for them today and which ones are asking to be seen again and brought forward again.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Deb. This has just been a totally magical show, like I said it would be in the beginning. And I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Robust Lifestyles. I look so forward to next month when we will share more with our listeners through your knowledge and through your nature connections and wildlife connections. It is just beautiful. And I want to thank all of our listeners for listening to this incredible show with our amazing diva, Deb Matlock. Please share this show with your family and friends. Check out all the other hosts and their shows on divasthatcare.com. And remember some of the golden nuggets Deb left with us. Find the threads of your true essence. And whose acceptance do you really want? Look deep in your heart to find that answer, and invite back in the threads from your childhood. And with that, I want to wish each of you a magical day. Remember, be kind to all, humans and animals. Give your animals a great big extra hug and share all your love with them as they so deserve it. Until we connect again on Robust Lifestyles, stay strong and healthy.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.